You're now tuned in to the Black Deth 101 podcast, where the streets talk and the reals roll.
This ain't just a podcast, baby.
It's a revolution with rhythm. Now let's get into it.
Welcome to the Black Deth 101 podcast, where the streets talk and the reels roll. We dissect our favorite Blaxploitation films that saved Hollywood and still influence it today. I'm your host, Nubius Black, and giving him 5 on the right-hand side, my brother from another mother, Johnny Deth.
Hey there, Nubius. How you doing today?
Doing fantastic, sweating to the oldies like we do. But before we get started, I want everybody to please like, subscribe, and share. And be forewarned that this podcast uses racially charged language in the context of the films we're talking about. But if you can't handle that, then you need to step off to the side, you jive-ass turkeys. What do we have for today?
Well, today, class is back in session, and we're sinking our teeth into one of the baddest, boldest, and most bloodthirsty flicks in the Blaxploitation vault, Blacula. Released in 1972, it gave us something that hadn't been seen before: a black vampire lead, a tragic love story, and horror with a funky soul. So forget Dracula's creepy castles. This one hits the streets of Los Angeles with bite.
Yeah, this is another one of those great American international films produced by Samuel Arkoff, and it is pretty much the very first black horror film. I mean, not played for laughs. It was really, if the studios had it their way, it would have been a comedy. But the director and the writer, William Crane, director, William Marshall, the star, they weren't having it. They could put some lightness in there, but they wanted to keep it as black and as real as possible.
Absolutely. The early 70s, as we've mentioned in previous episodes, was a pivotal moment in American pop culture. The civil rights movement had shaken the country, and Black Americans were demanding visibility, dignity, most of all representation, and on their own terms. Hollywood had been struggling. Studios were now eager to tap into that black dollar with the success of Shaft and Sweetback and then Superfly, and they were off to the races. And at the same time, horror films were undergoing a renaissance. A few years before was Night of the Living Dead and Rosemary's Baby, and we're only a year before The Exorcist.
Think about that. A year before The Exorcist. And we all know what that did to the American consciousness. And it was just cool. It's funny, if something like this, and it does to this day, sadly, that people, a movie would come out with a black writer, black director, or even just black stars, and just putting some representation in it, be it black, Latino, Asian. And now the word woke has been co-opted in such a negative light where it's just like, oh, you're just doing this, to appease. And the answer to that is yes. They see green, and that's the bottom fucking line. If people's gonna pay to see it. Now, you have every right in the world not to see whatever you don't want to see. Nobody's making you see anything. But these movies were made, like you said, to tap into the black dollar, to tap into the black consciousness and the experience of being black in America. And are you telling me only white folks in Europe dealt with vampires? You know what I'm saying? So they flipped the script and not just gave us a monster, because everybody, when they say black horror icon, Candyman, which he is. He's not the first. Not at all.
No, he's not.
William Marshall is, in my opinion, the first, and he has that voice that Candyman is known for as well.
The script was originally entitled Count Brown's Back in Town, and it was about a vampire pimp with shucking and jiving and shuffling around type comedy. And Crane took a look at the script and said, I don't think so. And then he spoke to William Marshall, and William Marshall said, I'll do it if you direct it. William Marshall, as you said, the voice, he was a classically trained actor. When he was cast, he insisted that his character not just be a black Dracula knockoff. He envisioned this noble African prince that goes to Europe to negotiate the slave trade with Count Dracula, is betrayed, and turned into a vampire. I mean, he was famous for touring Europe playing Othello.
Right,
and he made this part his own.
And they gave him a really cool backstory where he was a prince. Mama Walde was his name, and he had his wife named Luba, and you could see that she doled on him and she loved him as he did her. So it wasn't just like she was this damsel in distress, that she was just important to this meeting with these European rulers, including Count Dracula, who obviously no one knew he was a goddamn vampire. And, you know, Mama Walde was like, we're kind of negotiate the abolishment of the slave trade. And Dracula wasn't having that shit. He was like, well, there's merit in being a slave. Dracula was the original white supremacist.
Mama Waldy says he's talking like an animal.
Right. He says, you're talking like an animal and you're lusting on my woman. And Dracula lays down one of the coldest lines I've ever heard. He goes, well, aren't you the one from the jungle or something like that? It was like, wow, that's some fucked up shit. Dracula was a white supremacist in everything, including the word.
So the brother was African royalty. He's coming to Dracula himself to beg for help ending the slave trade. Instead, he gets cursed. He gets fanged up and locked in a coffin like a piece of stolen art. Fast forward to the 1970s, and we've got two unlucky dudes buying up all the antiques at Castle Dracula. And you know what? This is another first. We've got first black director of a horror film, first black horror film, first black vampire on screen, and then we get the first gay interracial couple.
And that was like 1972. Think about that shit. Were stereotype tropes involved? Of course it was, but they still had the representation that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. Yes, they end up being fodder for Dracula, but they still came back as vampires, which was cool because they weren't disposable per se characters. And here's another first. He's the first African-American director who asked to get a high-speed camera to do one shot in slow motion. And the studio said, no, it's not worth it. This is popcorn fare. We're not going to do it. And yeah, fought for it. And when he got it, it fucked all of us up, right? That was a fucked up scene in the 70s.
Once they got the dailies back on that scene, he got whatever he wanted.
Of course.
He needed to do a full body burn. He needed a bunch of cop cars. He got it. Whatever he needed after that scene was seen.
Yeah, there are stuff like you're mentioning that we take for granted as cinemaphiles today. Like you said, the full body burns and all that stuff. We see that shit and go, yeah, that's cool. But back then, that was no easy feat at all to get stuff like that done. Because let's face it, it was kind of dangerous. Setting a bitch on fire and having run around.
Especially for a movie that had a budget of about $500,000, AIP was in trouble. And they saw what was happening with the Black community and the Blaxploitation films. And they knew they'd always done pretty good with horror movies. So they decided to put the two together. And so this interracial gay couple buys the coffin that Blacula's locked inside of, unbeknownst to them. And as they're opening crates, one of them gashes his arm open just as they've unlocked the coffin.
And after that, Blacula literally smells blood. This guy's been locked up for a couple 100 years, and his wife, long gone, she died a horrible death, just either through starvation or suffocation. And when he awakens, he doesn't even know where he's at. He's literally the man at a time. And the fact that he's a vampire after all these years, he wakes up and he's kind of fucking hungry. And there he does. He finds 2 Fruit Loop snacks there, and he's ready to get it in. And he does.
He does. And then he leaves the warehouse to take a look at this new future he's found himself in. And who does he see? He sees Tina, the spitting image of Luva, his lost queen. And now we've got ourselves a gothic love story set to funk.
Which was kind of cool because everything connected. It wasn't just happenstance. Tina was friends of Bobby, one of the gay members that were killed by Blacula earlier in the film, and she went to view his body before the funeral. And Blacula was there ready to resurrect Bobby to be one of his minions. And then he sees Tina and realizes that she may be the reincarnation of Luva, his only reason to be alive. And I just thought that was just a really poetic for something that could have been easily trashed. As children, we watched it and we were just easily entertained. It was monsters, it was blood capsules, it was vampire bats, and so on. But as adults, if you pay attention to the running theme, it's just a sad, like you said, a sad gothic romance that towards the end, when he finally does what he has to do, turns into a revenge flick in the last 10 minutes. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just really good shit. And William Crane also, he touched on a lot of other like racial things that were going on at the time and still going on today with Dr. Black and Mr. Hyde. People need to go watch that movie. Don't worry about the fucking name of the film. It really works. And in today's society, it is a really fucked up thing to see. And another one, he was a hero in his own mind, trying to do right by people, and things just went awry. You can really, if you have the time, also go check out Horror Noir as a documentary of Black people in horror movies, and it's fucking fantastic. It's also a book.
It's a great, great documentary. And you're right. The direction by William Crane is tight. The mood is thick. And Gene Page's soundtrack.
My
We
God.
can't get through this without talking about that. Oh, man.
Last episode, we talked about Isaac Hayes and Chef, and I said it was the best song ever. And now we're listening to the funk of Page with Blacula. My God, the Blacula theme is one of my favorite themes ever. And this guy went on to produce music for the Jacksons, the Commodores, all the funk bands from back in the day, like Ohio Players, him and his brother. They really put out a lot of stuff. And what else? The
And
OJs.
speaking of that, there's a musical scene
Right.
in the middle of the nightclub, in the middle of the movie. And it's beautiful.
And again, William Crane had to fight to have an interracial group of people in the club, not sitting like blacks on one side, whites on the other. They were commingled. They were dancing together. They were in the same band. It reminded me of when I got married. My dad got mad that all my white friends sat in one section and all my black friends sat in the other section. And my dad got up and made them sit next to each other. So he was a William Crane to his time, whatever. But yeah, that the band that was singing, we didn't know until later that they were the Hughes Corporation that did the famous song "Rock the Boat."
Don't rock the boat.
Baby, don't tip the boat over.
Oh, man. I remember that song.
Yes, sir.
74, maybe a year or two after.
Give us the lowdown on William Marshall. He died in 2003.
William Marshall. Well, first of all, and I've mentioned this before, I used to see William Marshall at this little Thai restaurant that was way down at the ass end of Hollywood Boulevard. It looked like just a grimy coffee shop, but he was always there, and I would go there after the club. So after midnight, after seeing him there a couple of times, I brought a Blackula poster and I walked up to him and introduced myself, and he was gracious and he signed the poster. William Marshall was born in Gary, Indiana back in 1924, and he studied at New York University, Juilliard, and the Actors Studio. He was one of the first major African American performers to do Shakespeare roles in mainstream American theaters. Othello, he played the Moor of Venice over 200 times in the U.S., Europe. Critics praised his blend of regal poise and emotional power. He was considered the definitive Othello by many scholars. Had seen him in King Lear. I know he had done Macbeth. He directed several other Black theater troupes and television Trailblazer. In 1968, he played Dr. Daystrom, the
Yes,
genius
in Star Trek.
scientist. Yes, in the Ultimate Computer episode, and this was a milestone. A Black man portrayed as a scientific innovator in primetime TV in the 1960s, and he did many guest appearances from the Alfred Hitchcock Hour to Rawhide and Bonanza, and even the man from Uncle. And beyond Blacula, he was in the Boston Strangler, Scream Blacula Scream, and The Blaxorcist, which was retitled Abby back in
Right. That movie was
1974.
fucking nuts too.
It's crazy, and we will cover that in the future. But the thing about Blacula is he's not just a vampire. He's a Shakespearean level tragic hero, and damn, does he kick some LAPD ass.
Yes, sir. I remember he was also like in the King of Cartoons and Pee Wee's Big Playhouse.
Let the cartoons begin.
Was important. The important part he added also in Blackula, he was like, well, Mama Walde moves a certain way, talks a certain way, looks a certain way. But when he got the bloodlust, Blackula actually went through a physical change where he got more feral. He had more facial hair. His demeanor and his voice pitch went deeper. And he was more aggressive. And it's like very subtle. But if you're paying attention, it's spot on. Usually in vampire movies, the vampire is the same way with or without the fangs. With Blackula, he kind of subtly distinguishes Mama Walde from Blackula. And he took the Blackula as basically a knock on Dracula's name because Dracula gave it to him and basically as a joke. And he took it and he wore it like a badge of fucking honor and a medal. And he was just so good. He had so much dignity in everything he did. Dude, who puts on a cape and makes you go, I want to buy a fucking cape? Because the way he wore the cape, just putting it on, it was just like, he could have easily just buttoned it up or whatever, but he was so prim and proper. And he made sure it laid on him just so he can lay in a coffin and wrinkle it up.
And a word on the cape. William Crane fought for that cape because what did AIP insist? Black cape, red lining. And Crane said, no, we've seen that before. This is something new. I want a slate gray lining on that cape. And man, that thing was beautiful. Everyone in the movie wanted to steal it or buy it. And when you get to the sequel, Scream Blackula Scream, with a different director, you got the red lining.
You got the red cape, yep. You know what else I noticed was when Blackula comes out of the casket for the first time, if you pay attention and he opens that casket, you can see the claw marks from the inside of the casket of where he was trying to get free. And that little shit like that goes a long way with me. Little shit like that goes a long way. Little attention to detail.
You're absolutely right. I don't even know if I noticed that before.
And without a vampire, you got to have your own version of a Van Helsing. You needed a Van Helsing, and we got Thalamus Rasulala playing Dr. Tom.
First black vampire hunter.
Yeah. There's a lot of firsts in this film, man.
Absolutely. And G2 Kumbuka as Skillet, my man
Skillet. He had a small role, but it was a memorable role. So again, he made the for the time he did the most with his minutes. And from what I was reading, that he got his name from his grandmother, and it stood for memorable giant. And he was like 6'7". So yeah, he was a big guy. And he was in a lot of shows from back in the days, like Mannix and all that shit. He was always that heavy. And he's been in a lot of shit. Usually he was bald-headed. This is the first time I ever seen him was in Blackula, and he had the fro. But when you see him in other films, he's clean-shaven and he's bald-headed, and you really wouldn't know until you check out the name. And then you go, oh, that's that guy from that thing. You know, you always had that. And this show was loaded, not with just African-American talent, but the white talent on there as well was fucking incredible. I personally, my favorite Dracula of all time is Charles Macaulay, because he just looked the part. If you ever seen pictures or prints or carvings of Vlad the Impaler, who is supposedly a real person, this motherfucker looks just like him. His demeanor was very cool, and he made you lower your guard because he was friendly. But then when he turned into when the Dracula shit kicked in, he was terrifying. He really was.
Animalistic.
And so I was mad that his part was so small. I wish he had a larger part, but I dig what they did with it. He was there for a purpose, and he fulfilled that purpose, and it was fantastic. And that guy he looked historical accurate to me.
And don't forget Elisha Cook Jr. as Sam, the morgue attendant.
The Cook's in everything.
Yeah, from the Maltese Falcon to House on Haunted Hill, that his inclusion, it kind of bridged that old school horror crowd into the new era.
Shit, not only that, if you want to keep vampires in it, he was the drunkard on Salem's Lot, the original Salem's Lot.
The miniseries, yes.
And he, like you said, Twilight Zone, he was one of them old crazy white people on the Rosemary's Baby. He was on that.
He's been in everything.
Star Trek, everything, like you said. And then you had people who made a big impact in this film because she was she was in peril, but then after a while she became she had her own agency, and that was Vanetta McGee, who played Luva, and she was fantastic in that role. And she died in 2010.
She was in the Mac. I know that.
She was in the Mac. She was in the Shaft in Africa.
Detroit 9000.
Hammer.
Yeah.
And she was in Repo Man. Remember that with the fucking Emilio Estevez and his crazy brother Charlie Sheen?
Man, Life of a Repo Man is tense.
And then you had like the woman that was in everything in the 70s, Denise Nichols, who's still alive, by the way. She's 81. She was
She
in
was in everything.
a lot of shows that we're gonna pick up. She was in A Piece of the Action with Bill Cosby and Sidney Poitier. Let's Do It Again, the sequel with Sidney Poitier and Bill Cosby. She was in Room 222 when I was a kid. I was like, yeah, she was one of the people in that. And she was beautiful. She was strong. You know what was funny is like when they had her at the gravesite when they were digging up the white victim, and when he jumped out of the coffin and Thalamus beat the shit out of the vampire and then stabbed him. And she was like, "You're killing him. You're killing him." And I'm saying, me, as if I was there, but like, bitch, he was in the ground 6 minutes ago. What do you think I'm gonna do?
All around a great movie. And that ending, I don't want to give anything away, but not what you're going to expect. I don't know. Should we talk about the ending?
I say we do. I mean, the movie came out in 72. You ain't
You know
see
what?
that
If you
shit by
haven't seen
now.
it by
That's your
now,
lost.
oh man. Let's just say it's again not your typical horror wrap up, tragic, poetic, and unforgettable, and worms. So the worms are just a little bit of it.
It was such a fucked up ending. I mean, like you said, it was tragic.
The police have tracked Blacula to where he has his coffin stashed in the abandoned underground subways of Los Angeles. And he has summoned Tina to come and join him. And she's decided she wants to be with him.
And then she goes down there and the cops track her. The chief, who's the head of this whole investigation, Lieutenant Jack Peters, tells them, whatever you do not engage with these people. Just observe and let us know. So, of course, one cop sees Tina. And sadly, this is just fiction, but it's very much fact. Instead of just doing what the cop was told to do, he pulls out a gun when he sees Blackula embrace Tina and shoots Tina and shoots her dead. And things don't work out after that shit. You know, you shoot the man. He had a line in this movie, and to this day, it is the most beautiful line and horrifying at the same time. And he said, "I live again, only to lose you twice." How fucked up is that?
It is so fucked up. And he, at that point, decides it's time to turn her. I don't want to lose her again. So he turns her into a vampire and he goes out to kill every cop in that damn underground.
And he, like you said, he rips them from asshole to mouth hole in this film. And while he's doing that, and Tina is going through her metamorphosis, and she lays in Dracula's coffin. And this is another double whammy of being fucked up. So while Dracula's out doing his thing, getting revenge on the cops that murdered her, you know, you have Dr. Thomas and the chief of police or whatever. They find the coffin, thinking Blackula is in the coffin. And what does he do?
He opens that coffin and bang, slams that stake into what he is expecting to be Blackula, but it's Tina.
So he kills his sister-in-law, Dr. Thomas does. Blackula finally comes back and he sees this shit. And he could easily just take his revenge out even further on, you know, Jack Peters, Lieutenant Peters, and Dr. Thomas. And he calls Dr. Thomas and he tells him that basically what I'm saying, that I could just rip you guys to shreds, but I have no reason to live. You took away the reason I had to live for the second time. You took it away from me. And I didn't make her become a vampire. I didn't force her to come down here to do what she was gonna do. It was a love. It was literally a love story. And it ends so tragically where not only did she get staked for mistaken identity, she was staked by her own brother-in-law, and Blackula could have easily dispatched these guys like he did with the police. But he was just like, fuck it, I'm done. And what does he do next?
He walks out. He drags himself out into the killing rays of the sun.
And he dies a slow, horrible, lingering death on the rooftop of that building.
You can see the agony in his eyes as he's pulling himself up that last stairway and out onto the street.
Because again, like you said, he could have easily just said, you know what, the hell with this shit, I'm killing all of y'all. But he didn't, because the fight was fought out of him. He had no more fight left. He was done. And it's so sad to see that he was so willing to he crossed the timeline to be with her. And when she finally accepted that she was his reincarnated wife and that she was going to go away with him, where the fuck they were going to go, who knows? That's not important. It was the fact that she accepted it. He didn't force her into anything. And it was almost like back in the day when I was around, people were treated with dignity and respect until I met this Dracula guy. And now here I am, fast forward into the future of 1971, and things hasn't pretty much fucking changed. So I don't want to be here anymore. And that's how it rolled, and it ended with like no fanfare, none of that shit. It just ended on this dour, sad note. And it was just so good. And going back to the guy that Jack Peters, he reminded me of Clu Gulager, who's in a lot of genre films. Clu Gulager always plays like a cop or an authority figure, and he's always like a complete idiot. So and he plays it perfectly. He's a great actor. I always liked him, and I like his son's direction and work that he's been doing in the horror genre. But the actor that played Jack Peters, I forget his name. He was from Canada, I think, some shit like that.
The director actually learned in Canada. William Crane, we should probably mention, before Blacula, directed a lot of episodes of the Mod Squad. He then went on to do things like Starsky and Hutch afterwards. So he had a long, good working career.
Yeah, he actually also, watching horror noir, it tells you where a lot of the horror directors, from the director of the latest Candyman movie, I forget her name. She also did the Marvels as well. Be that what it is. A lot of people didn't dig it. I thought it was impressive, just the fact that she was a woman of color given multi-million-dollar, movie to direct 3 women in a genre that is usually dominated by white people. Of course, that being said, the movie didn't make that much money at all, and they considered it a failure. But she says, "Look, man, I can at least say I'm one of the first that Marvel tapped on the shoulder to do it." But William actually, he got the guys that created the Tales from the Hood movies to actually make movies as well. So his touch is everywhere. Blacula's touch is everywhere. Without Blacula, we wouldn't have Blade. We just wouldn't. And it's just like that's a fucking fact. Blacula and Blade have so much in common. Blade was a guy who was killing vampires, who was a vampire, who hated vampires because what they did to his mother. But it still had that poetic symmetry, if you will.
Yes, the heroic vampire, which I think Marshall created that. Blacula in 1973 won the very first Saturn Award they gave out for horror films. So 73, the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films gave it the Best Horror Film Award. And it was so successful, budget of $500,000, made over $1 million in its first 3 weeks. They had a sequel going within a year, Scream, Blacula, Scream, which, not as good a movie as Blacula, but it's got Pam Grier in an early role, and it's got William Marshall as Blacula, so you still can't really go wrong.
And what I was impressed with Scream, Blacula, Scream was they didn't recycle what worked in the first movie. So you got to give them credit for that. That Blacula was reincarnated because somebody found his bones, and that a young man who was pissed off that he was shunned from being a Papaloa of his voodoo clan in New Orleans, he didn't get the nod, but the nod went to Pam Grier's character, Lisa Fortier.
And that's Pam Grier right off of doing Coffee. She went right from Coffee into Scream, Blacula, Scream.
Exactly. And it was weird because Coffee, great movie, but she was undercover and she was more about her body. She was, let's face it, she was a sex kitten back then. She was the sex kitten, especially in African American parlances. But the fact that in Scream, Blacula, Scream, she played a pretty straight character. She didn't trade off for her sexual wiles or her feminine wiles. It was because of her knowledge of African culture that attracted Blacula when he was reincarnated. That and the fact that Blacula knew that if she knew a hoodoo, that maybe she could come up with a fucking spell to remove the vampire curse that's placed upon him. And again, this motherfucker gets within a hair's breadth of being fucking cured of this shit, and bad shit happens when the cops show up.
I tell you, in this film, Mamuwalde's pain is deeper. He seeks to end his curse through Lisa's magic, and his sadness and his rage are elevated. And he even, I think, in there at some point acknowledges that he can't always control himself now.
Can't do it.
And the ending is kind of poignant and ambiguous.
And also, we can't leave without giving Richard Lawson credit. This guy, he's one of those cats that you see like throughout each film he's in, and you really don't remember the last film he was in because you don't put it all together. This guy's been in everything, and he's still alive. He's 78 years old, but it took me forever to realize, God, he's the only black guy in Poltergeist, and he lived.
Yeah. He gets out of there. He plays Ryan, the one of the parapsychologists. He's in Streets of Fire. He used to be in Dynasty and All My Children of all things. And I think you told me, wasn't he married to Beyonce's mother?
Yeah, he was married to Tina Knowles. Go figure. And he was a cop in the 70s film called Sugar Hill, which we're also going to. Sugar Hill is one of my favorite fucking movies, bar none, because it is insanity. I love it. Yeah, Richard Lawson was in all kind of shit. He was in all kind of shit, and he's still alive. And I just thought it was a good Don Mitchell. Remember him?
Yeah.
And Don Mitchell's been in all kind of shit. He was like that, always that, if you need like that tough ass black dude in films, he was like the guy who pushed around Ironside, for Christ's sake.
He's Lisa's boyfriend in Scream Blackula Scream. And again, if you haven't seen these movies, set yourself up for a double feature and have a good time.
Yes. You can't go wrong with them two. You really can't. And it's just like characters aren't just throwaway characters. Sure, you got characters that are going to be victims or it wouldn't be a fucking vampire film. But the storyline just made sense. And one of the coolest things about Blacula, Richard Lawson's character, where he said that, he was so vain and such an egomaniac that he swore he was going to become the Papaloa of this voodoo group that he was a part of, and he didn't get it. And when Blackula was reincarnated and bit him and transformed him, the first thing Richard Lawson's character says is, I can't see myself in the mirror. A man has to see himself. And that wasn't just his ego talking about him not being able to see himself. He's talking about people need to see themselves in film. Be it you being African American, Hispanic, Asian, you need to have representation. And a man needs to see himself. And I just thought that, dude, this fucking movie was so ahead of its time with some of the shit they were laying down. Come on. Then you had Michael Conrad, who always plays a fucking cop. He was like the cop from Hill Street Blues. He was the guy that telling people, you be safe out there. Or was that fucking, yeah, it was Hill Street Blues. He was the guy that was always giving people their fucking jobs. You guys be careful out there, and I'll sit here and drink coffee all day until the next episode. But he's been in all kind of shit, too. But, man, he was like in The Longest Yard. He was one of the fucking guards. He was in, there was this really fucked up movie where the people, dude, I love you like a play cousin, but white people do some weird shit. They get on fucking boats and go, let's go into Satan's Triangle and see what would happen. No black person's going to get on a boat with you. Fuck all that. He did. And they all got fucking, Satan was like fake that he was a capsized survivor of a shipwreck, and they brought him on board, and everybody was feeding him and kissing his ass. And next thing you know, one by one, people on that boat was being fucking murked out. And turned out that was Satan. And they're now surprised that they're all dead. He was like a helicopter pilot or some shit. Yeah, I remember that shit. That shit was funny as hell. It was like, come on, man. If it's called Satan's Triangle, and my coworker is Doug McClure, I'm not going with you. Because Doug McClure is like, you hear that name, you're going, we're all gonna die, right? It's too funny. But yeah, man, you could go down the rabbit hole when you watch these films, man, and you go, oh, I know that person, I know this person. Good shit, though. Good shit. And again, I think they need to make more films like this. And it's all about, if you're trying to make money, and I think the only people who are willing to do it, and they have a track record of having some really great films and having some real shitters, too. And that's Blumhouse and A24.
Yeah.
They're the only ones that are willing to take these quirky type of films and small budgets, and then, hey, sometimes they get a fucking winner in those films. Let's face it. I wish Blumhouse, if they're listening to this, and A24. Do some more ethnically diverse films.
When I was researching for this, I kept reading about a Blacula remake, reboot, sequel that was supposed to come out in 2024, and then it just didn't get made. You hear anything about that?
I did. And I heard that they were trying to get the rights to this film and it just went away. And all I kept thinking of is, who would you play? Who would you get to play the lead role? That actor, you need to get an actor that's going to get asses in seats. You need to get an actor that's going to put asses in every 16 inches of a theater. So you can't just skimp on the main character. Everybody else you can have up and comers play the other roles, but you need to have that guy. And I'm thinking, who would you have play that role with such gravitas? You know, that's a big word for me, but you can't just throw anybody out there.
No, and as we just were mentioning Blumhouse, hey guys, I hear every week you're buying another property, whether it be Wolfman, Invisible Man, Saw. I got one word for you, Blacula.
Now, I know he's tired of hearing his name being attached to shit, but that's your fault for being so fucking good. And that is like, I could see Denzel playing this role. I really do. He did Othello, and he was fucking knocked that shit out the park, and nobody went to fucking see it. People were thinking, Othello, I played that game. No, fucking see the movie. Every Othello you usually seen was played by a white guy when Othello was fucking African. You know, besides James Earl Jones playing Othello, and maybe
Marshall.
William Marshall. Come on, I think he would be a great Blacula. Just he's just suave enough to pull it off. Or you know who else I like? Oh my God, I can't remember his name. Gosh darn it, Sterling K. What's his last name? I want to say Brown. He was in Black Panther, and he's in a show called Paradise, which is fantastic. Everybody should watch that because it's fucking insane. But I could see him playing a Blacula character because it's just, you got to have that. You really need to have that gravitas. You can't just go in there and go, well, I'm going to put in some fucking wax teeth and roll with the dice, you know, and it doesn't work that way. You still need to carry that character because it's a ludicrous fucking character. Let's think about it. It's a fucking vampire. But you still need to carry. You need a guy that can carry it. And you know, most people would pick somebody that, you know, on top of the food chain of movies, you know, of that rank. But yeah, his name was Sterling K. Brown. Get that fucking guy to play this role, man. I mean, he's got a great look.
Do it,
dude. That would just be off the point. And again, we're talking about Blacula, and without Blacula, we wouldn't get Sinners.
No,
Sinners is the fucking movie of the year so far. I haven't seen anything yet to knock that off of the fucking acting points.
It's my favorite film this year so far. It kicked the previous favorite film of the year, which was The Monkey, off the list. But in closing, I guess, you know, folks out there remember, Blacula wasn't just horror. It was history, heartbreak, and heat. And William Marshall didn't just play a vampire. He really redefined one. With that velvet voice, royal appearance, he turned this low-budget B-movie into a cultural milestone. So sometime you hear someone laugh at the name, tell them, Blacula walked so the rest could run. And as the credits roll and the coffin closes, remember, the undead don't die. They echo.
And while they're echoing, we need you to please like this episode, subscribe, share, and we'll see you on the other side of this. Same black time, same black channel.
Peace.
In the heart of the night where the moon don't lie, he walks with a cape and a hunger in his eye. From the tomb to the city, from chains to the trees, the prince of the shadows with a cold heartbeat.
Yeah, you thought Dracula was cold.
These brothers ice.
Blacula, he don't sleep at night. Smooth like velvet, but he's looking to bite. From Transylvania to them LA lights, he got that ancient soul and undead rights.
Blacula, the funk don't die when the coffin cracks wide. He was cursed by the count back in 1703. Now he's strutting through walks like a vampire G. He got soul in his stroll, death in his grin. Don't cross him wrong or you won't rise again.
Think sharp, mind sharper, style deadly.
They called him Amuelde, royalty betrayed by blood and blade. Now he's stalking the job scene, looking for justice and made the a queen. Blackula, don't call him no ghoul, who's a king in exile with a coffin that's cool. And he slides through the night, better follow the rule. Don't mess with the brother who redefines cool. Blackula, ain't no stake strong enough to chill that cool. And he's strutting through the night, better follow the rule. Ain't no snake strong enough to kill that cool.